There are moments in life when silence becomes the loudest witness. Moments when your heart, heavy with unshed tears, cries out in a language no one else seems to understand. You carried trust like a fragile glass, holding it close to your chest, believing that those around you would cherish it as you did. You looked into familiar faces, thinking they held the same love, the same loyalty. Yet behind your back, when the room grew quiet and shadows stretched long across your life, they conspired. They whispered in the dark corners. They plotted in secret chambers of deceit, thinking their betrayal was hidden beyond reach, beyond sight. But what they forgot, what they never counted on, was that even in the darkest hour, when no human eye could see, God was watching. He saw the very first seed of treachery planted in their hearts. He heard the quiet lies they told themselves to justify their wrongdoings, while they masked their intentions with smiles in your presence. God saw the true face behind the mask. He saw it all. The hidden motives, the unspoken desires, the cunning steps they took to harm you while pretending to care. They believed that because their betrayal was silent, it was safe. They believed that if no one witnessed their cruelty, there would be no price to pay. But how foolish is the one who forgets that nothing escapes the gaze of the divine. How blind are those who think they can hide from the one who formed their very breath. Your nights were long, weren't they? You lay awake, your mind tangled in confusion, your heart heavy with questions that had no answers. Why did they do this? What did I do to deserve such deceit? The pain of betrayal is not only in the act itself, but in the weight of the silence that follows. It is the echo of your kindness, thrown into the abyss of their cruelty. It is the ache of trust broken in places too deep for words. Yet, even in those silent sufferings, God was present. He saw you restrain your anger when you could have lashed out. He saw you keep your dignity when you were stripped of respect. He saw you endure, not because you were weak, but because you were noble. Because you placed your faith not in revenge, but in His justice. And justice is never delayed, only prepared. There is a divine patience at work that your betrayers will never understand until it arrives at their doorstep. They thought they had escaped. They thought time would bury their secrets beneath the dust of forgetfulness, but the wheels of divine justice never cease turning. Slowly, silently they turn, grinding the proud and the treacherous beneath their weight. Ask yourself this: was your suffering in vain, or was it seen, measured, and noted by a God who never slumbers? Was your pain merely a passing moment? Or was it the very evidence placed before the throne of justice? You see, nothing is wasted. No tear you shed went unnoticed. No cry of your heart was ignored. Where humans may fail to bring justice, God does not fail. And now, as you stand at the edge of what feels like despair, listen carefully. Justice is nearer than you think. God, who witnessed their secret betrayal, holds the scales in His hands. They cannot escape His gaze. They cannot flee His justice. Their hidden sins, once cloaked in darkness, are being brought into the light. This is where your heart must find its rest, not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in the quiet, unshakable assurance that justice belongs to God. He has seen what you have endured. He has recorded their every step in the book of truth. And He will answer, in His perfect time, with a justice so profound that even they will tremble. God saw the intentions before the actions, long before their hands moved, before their lips shaped the first lie. Before the betrayal unfolded in the visible world, the storm had already begun to brew in their hearts. The betrayal you eventually discovered was only the final act of a play that had been rehearsed many times in their mind. They smiled at you as if everything was pure, as if their intentions were clean. But behind the surface of their charm, seeds of disloyalty had already been planted. They thought no one could see the inner workings of their desires, but they forgot that even the quietest whispers of the heart are deafening in the courts of heaven. They planned their deceit in silence, believing that unspoken thoughts were free from consequence. But the one who created the depths of the human soul is not blind to its shadows. Before they ever acted against you, before a single scheme was set in motion, God had already seen the flicker of betrayal flickering within them. He saw how they justified their intentions, how they silenced their own conscience to make room for treachery. He saw how they entertained thoughts of harming you while still sitting beside you, pretending to share in your laughter, your tears, your trust. It was not just the actions that wounded you, it was the realization that the betrayal began long before you saw the evidence with your eyes. You trusted them with your secrets, with your vulnerabilities, with the pieces of your heart, not knowing that even as you shared, they were already turning against you in their mind. The depth of that pain is immeasurable, for it feels like a violation of the unseen bond between souls. But understand this, God witnessed every unspoken intention. He read the hidden script of their betrayal before it was ever performed. Think of the moments when you felt a subtle shift in their behavior, a coldness creeping into their warmth, an unexplained distance in their closeness. At the time you brushed it off, convincing yourself it was your imagination, but deep down, your spirit sensed what your eyes could not yet see. That was not merely intuition, it was the echo of divine awareness, whispering to your heart that something was wrong. While you struggled to make sense of it, God had already marked the intentions brewing in the dark corners of their soul. What they believed to be private debates within their mind were open confessions before the throne of the Almighty. Their excuses, their inner rationalizations for hurting you, were laid bare before God. Nothing was hidden, not a single thought escaped his notice. Even as they wore the mask of loyalty, their heart's corruption screamed the truth to the heavens. There is a certain sorrow in realizing that betrayal is not an accident, but a choice nurtured in silence. Yet there is also comfort in knowing that God does not wait for actions to unfold before he begins his divine accounting. Justice, in its purest form, begins at the root, at the place where intentions first form. So, while they were still crafting their schemes in the safety of their mind, they were already being watched, their future being shaped not by their plans, but by God's response to their hidden betrayal. Their belief in secrecy was their greatest folly. They assumed that what remained unspoken could never be judged. But God does not need words to uncover wickedness. He peers into the silent chambers of the heart, and he weighs the motives with precision. He saw how they cradled selfish desires, how they fed the fire of betrayal with quiet determination. And he began his work of justice at that very moment, not a moment later. As you think back to those days when you felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it, remember this truth: you were not imagining things. The reason your heart felt uneasy was because God had already seen what you could not. He was already at work, even as you wrestled with confusion. Their hidden intentions were not hidden at all. They were fully exposed to the one who judges not by outward appearance, but by the secrets of the heart. Your silent pain became divine evidence. There is a unique kind of pain that belongs only to the betrayed. It is not loud, it does not scream for attention, yet it consumes you from the inside out. You lived through this pain quietly, holding yourself together while your heart fractured beneath the weight of what they did to you. You smiled when you wanted to break. You continued to care for others even when you were the one bleeding, and in your silence, you may have wondered if anyone saw the depth of your suffering. But let me tell you this with certainty. Your silent pain did not disappear into the void. It rose as evidence before God, more powerful than any spoken accusation. Every time you swallowed your tears and pressed forward, believing that you were alone in your agony, heaven took notice. Every moment you chose to carry your burden with dignity instead of bitterness, your pain was recorded not as weakness, but as proof of your endurance and innocence. Your suffering, though hidden from the world, became undeniable evidence in the courts of the divine. They may have acted in secrecy, but so did your pain become a silent witness, testifying to the injustice you endured. There is something profoundly sacred about silent suffering. When you chose not to retaliate, when you decided to bear your wounds quietly rather than publicly lash out, you placed your trust in something far greater than human justice. You trusted that even if no one else saw, God did, and indeed He did. He watched as you wept in the quiet corners of your life, as you questioned why your love was repaid with betrayal, as you tried to understand how those you held closest could cut you so deeply. Your tears, invisible to many, were visible to Him. They were not wasted drops of sorrow. They were sacred declarations of your innocence. Each tear fell like a note of testimony, echoing in the chambers of divine justice. They spoke of your loyalty, your faithfulness, your undeserved pain. They cried out for justice when your lips could not form the words, and God heard them all. Do not underestimate the power of your silent endurance. What felt like isolation was, in fact, an accumulation of undeniable proof before God. It was as if every heartbeat of pain built a case on your behalf. The very patience you displayed became a weapon in the hands of divine justice. While they thought they had succeeded in their secret betrayal, they failed to see that your quiet suffering was gathering strength, becoming a force that no earthly power could dismiss. In the moments when you felt invisible, you were more seen than ever before. In the hours when you believed your pain was ignored, it was being meticulously recorded. Heaven does not overlook the wounded. God does not forget the cries of the silent. Your pain became a holy testimony, one that demands a response. And that response is justice, tailored to the depth of your suffering. They may have believed that because you did not expose them, they were safe. They assumed your silence was weakness, that your restraint meant they could walk away unscathed. But in reality, your silence shouted louder than any accusation could have. It spoke volumes in the courts of heaven, presenting irrefutable evidence against them. Your silent pain, far from being in vain, became the very foundation upon which their reckoning is now being built. Their temporary escape is a setup for a greater fall. They walk as though they have escaped. Their steps are light, their faces wear a mask of calm, and their days unfold without any sign of the storm that is gathering for them. They move through life convinced that their betrayal has gone unnoticed by the heavens, that their secret treachery will never catch up to them. They assume that because judgment has not fallen immediately upon their heads, they have outpaced the consequences of their actions. But what they fail to understand is that delayed justice is not absent justice. It is a meticulous, measured, and devastating response being prepared beyond their sight. There is a kind of arrogance that grows in the hearts of those who believe they have escaped accountability. It whispers to them that they are untouchable, that the harm they caused will fade away with time, that the universe has already forgotten the wounds they inflicted. They go about their days with this dangerous illusion, adding to their comforts, building their lives on stolen peace, and decorating their existence with the spoils of their betrayal. Yet beneath this surface of temporary ease, something far more powerful is at work, something they are too blind to see. Every moment they believe they are safe is a thread being woven into the tapestry of their downfall. The delay is not mercy, it is strategy. It is the gathering of evidence, the alignment of circumstances, the silent summoning of justice. They are like a person walking deeper into a forest, unaware that the path they tread is closing behind them. With every step forward, they are sealing their own fate, tightening the circle from which they cannot escape. The delay in their downfall serves a purpose far greater than they can comprehend. It allows them to reveal more of their true character, to dig their own pit deeper, to expose their intentions fully before the justice of God strikes. The higher they climb on their fragile tower of deceit, the more devastating their fall will be when the foundation crumbles beneath them. There is a bitter irony in their temporary triumph, for it makes the final collapse all the more complete. Have you ever watched them and wondered how they could continue so confidently, as if justice were a myth? Have you questioned why the heavens seemed silent while your heart carried the weight of their betrayal? Understand this: the silence of God is not approval. It is the calm before the storm. It is the patience of a righteous judge who allows the guilty to believe they are free, only to catch them in the full measure of their pride. Their laughter now rings hollow in the ears of eternity. Their celebrations are but echoes that will soon turn into cries for mercy. They think they have built walls high enough to shield them from consequences, but the justice of God does not need to scale walls. It rises from within, consuming even the most fortified places of false security. Their comfort will betray them. Their success will turn against them. What they thought was their escape route will become the very path of their undoing. You see, there is no true escape from divine justice. They are not as free as they believe. They are not as victorious as they pretend to be. Every day that passes without visible consequences is not a day of freedom, but a day closer to the inevitable reckoning. The temporary nature of their escape is a cruel illusion, one that sets them up for a fall so complete that they will have no refuge left to run to. They have mistaken delay for deliverance, but they will soon understand the truth. Justice, when it arrives, will not be random or hasty. It will be deliberate, precise, and undeniable. And in that moment they will realize too late that what they thought was their escape was, all along, the perfect setup for their fall. The exposure of their secrets is unstoppable. There is a fragile comfort in secrecy, a false security they built around their betrayal. They convinced themselves that if no one else knew, they could continue unpunished. They wrapped their wickedness in layers of lies, hiding it beneath polished appearances and smooth words. They smiled as if their hearts were clean. They acted as if their hands were unstained, all the while believing that the truth would never find its way to the surface. But there is a force in this world, far beyond human control, that pulls hidden things into the light, and that force is already at work. What they fail to understand is that secrets are never truly safe. They are like embers buried under ash, quiet but still burning. Sooner or later a wind will blow, the ash will scatter, and the fire beneath will ignite for all to see. They buried their actions deep beneath layers of deceit, but they did not realize that the earth itself testifies against them. Time does not bury the truth. It preserves it until the appointed moment of revelation. Their secrets are unraveling slowly, thread by thread, though they cannot yet see it. Conversations they thought were private are echoing in places they never imagined. Lies they believed were airtight are beginning to leak. The masks they wear are cracking under the weight of their own guilt. Even the people they once trusted as accomplices are growing restless, weighed down by their part in the deception. There is an invisible hand pulling apart the seams of their falsehood, and no matter how tightly they try to hold it together, they are powerless against its strength. Do you remember the times you questioned your own perception, doubting the truth you felt in your soul because they were so skilled at hiding theirs? You saw hints, glimpses, small signs that didn't yet form a complete picture. But deep inside, you sensed that something was wrong. That was not imagination, it was discernment. It was your spirit recognizing what their actions tried so hard to conceal. And now, what once felt like fragments is becoming a full revelation, not just to you, but to the world. The exposure of their secrets is not something you have to force or fight for. It is happening on its own, orchestrated by the same divine justice that saw your pain in silence. God does not let lies rest forever. He allows them to fester, to grow heavy until they can no longer be contained. Their secrets, once hidden in the dark, are being dragged into the light by hands far greater than yours or mine. There is a certain beauty in watching the truth unfold naturally. It requires no revenge, no retaliation. It requires only patience and faith that justice has its own timing. The very lies they built their safety upon are now turning into snares beneath their feet. Every falsehood, every secret act of betrayal is being collected and prepared for the moment of unveiling. They cannot control it. They cannot stop it. It moves forward with the certainty of the sunrise, unstoppable and undeniable. They may still pretend, they may still act as though they are untouchable, spinning their narratives to keep others in the dark. But deep inside, they feel the unraveling. They sense the inevitable approach of exposure. Their heart races when unexpected questions arise. Their mind replays the risks they thought were buried. They cannot escape the growing pressure, the tightening grip of truth as it rises from beneath the surface. Understand this. Exposure is not a matter of if, but when. The clock is ticking, and with each passing moment, the hidden is becoming visible. The betrayal they thought was buried is rising to meet them face to face. And when it does, they will stand stripped of every disguise, exposed not only to you, but to all who once believed their lies. Their conscience will become their torment. There is a torment that no one sees, a punishment that strikes not from outside, but from within the walls of one's own soul. It creeps in quietly, like a shadow stretching over the heart, until it consumes every corner of their being. This is the relentless voice of conscience, the uninvited guest in the chambers of their mind, reminding them day after day of the betrayal they committed in secret. Though they may appear calm to the world, though their lips still smile and their posture remains proud, beneath that fragile surface is a battlefield raging with guilt and unspoken fears. In the beginning, they silenced that voice with ease. When they first betrayed you, they felt a fleeting rush of power, a cruel satisfaction in believing they had outsmarted the justice of life. They justified their actions with twisted reasoning, convincing themselves that you deserved the pain, or that their betrayal was necessary for their own gain. But the human soul, no matter how hardened, was not designed to carry the weight of such treachery without consequence. Slowly, like cracks in a dam, their defenses began to give way. At first it was only in the quiet moments, late at night when the noise of the world faded and they were left alone with their thoughts. In those hours, when the masks were removed and the pretenses no longer needed, their mind became their enemy. The memories of what they did, the image of your trustful eyes, the sound of your voice echoing with kindness they never deserved, all of it returns to them unbidden, like ghosts haunting their rest. Sleep becomes a fragile, broken thing. They toss and turn, chased by the very choices they thought they could bury. Their dreams betray them, turning into restless visions that replay their actions in twisted, unforgiving loops. Even in moments of exhaustion, when their body cries out for rest, their spirit is not granted peace. For how can a soul steeped in deception find true rest? How can they close their eyes and escape the eyes of the one who sees all, even in the darkness? By day, they wear their familiar masks, presenting a facade of normalcy to the world. They laugh at gatherings, speak confidently in conversations, and behave as though the weight of their betrayal is not crushing their chest, But beneath the surface, anxiety coils like a serpent around their heart. Every innocent question from others feels like an accusation. Every unexpected moment of silence rings like a verdict being read aloud. They cannot silence the creeping dread that someone, somewhere, knows what they have done. Their conscience does not rest. It follows them into their ambitions, tainting their victories with a bitter taste of guilt. They may achieve new heights, they may surround themselves with applause, but in the back of their mind is a constant gnawing reminder. None of this is clean. None of this is free from the bloodstain of their betrayal. They thought success would drown out the whispers of their wrongdoing, but it only amplifies them, making the quiet voice of conscience roar louder in contrast to their hollow achievement. Even the relationships they build after their betrayal are touched by this invisible poison. They struggle to trust others, forever fearing that they themselves will be betrayed as they once betrayed you. They look into the eyes of new companions and wonder if they too harbor secret knives. In trying to escape the consequences of their actions, they have chained themselves to an unending cycle of suspicion and unrest. They live in fear of the very betrayal they unleashed upon you, haunted by the knowledge that they have invited the same fate upon themselves. Worse still is the realization, slow and agonizing, that they cannot run from themselves. They may change cities, build new lives, surround themselves with distractions, but wherever they go, their conscience follows. It is a shadow stitched to their soul, impossible to sever. It whispers to them in crowded rooms and screams in their solitude, and no matter how far they travel, they remain prisoners of their own making, locked in a cell crafted from their choices and their guilt. This is the silent justice that precedes all others. Before any external punishment arrives, before their secrets are laid bare to the world, their conscience begins its relentless work. It erodes their peace, drains their joy, and turns their quiet moments into unbearable torment. What they once dismissed as insignificant choices now loom over them like towering giants, unmovable and terrifying. They cannot confess, for confession would cost them their carefully built facade. They cannot forget, for the soul does not forget what it was never meant to endure, and so they live caught between silence and suffering, between denial and despair. This is the price they pay in secret, the torment of a conscience that will not be silenced, the agony of a soul that cannot escape the justice of its own guilt. Your dignity in suffering is your victory. There is a quiet strength in the way you chose to suffer. Perhaps you never saw it this way, because pain clouds the clarity of our victories. Maybe you doubted it, thinking that your silence was seen as weakness, that your refusal to strike back was mistaken for surrender. But let me assure you, there is a victory wrapped in the very way you carried your pain. You see, while they stooped to deception and cruelty, you held your dignity like a shield, even when it felt heavy in your trembling hands. You did not allow their betrayal to turn you into a mirror of their ugliness. And in that choice, you won a battle far greater than they will ever understand. They expected you to crumble. They expected your pain to twist you into someone bitter, angry, and vengeful. They wanted their betrayal to become your undoing, to see you lose yourself in the chaos they created. But you, with all the ache in your chest and the storm in your mind, chose something far nobler. You chose restraint when you had every reason to lash out. You chose silence when you could have shouted your pain for the world to hear. You chose to preserve your character, even as theirs fell to ruin. This choice, though it cost you sleepless nights and rivers of hidden tears, was not in vain. For dignity in suffering is not just about endurance. It is about refusing to let darkness reshape the goodness in you. It is the decision to remain rooted in integrity when everything around you is shaking. While they fed the fire of their cruelty, you walked through the flames without letting them consume your soul. And though it may have seemed like you were walking alone, heaven walked beside you, witnessing every step you took in quiet courage. They mistook your composure for fragility. They saw your tears but failed to recognize the strength it takes to weep without collapsing. They assumed that because you did not retaliate, you had been defeated. But they misunderstood the language of true strength. True strength is not found in loud outbursts or public vengeance. It is found in the silent resolve to remain kind in a world that has been cruel to you. It is found in the decision to guard your heart from becoming like those who sought to wound you. There is a certain majesty in silent suffering, though the world does not always recognize it, though applause does not greet it. Heaven celebrates it. Every moment you held your head high when it felt too heavy to lift. Every time you walked away from a confrontation that begged for retaliation. Every instance you chose grace over bitterness. These were victories more profound than any they could ever claim. For while they fought to destroy your peace, you fought to preserve your soul. They believed they had the power because they wounded you, but the real power was always yours. Power is not in inflicting pain, it is in choosing not to return it. Power is not in hiding behind lies, it is in standing firm in truth, even when truth costs you dearly. Your decision to uphold your dignity amid betrayal placed you under the favor of a justice far greater than their schemes. You became a living testimony to the strength of goodness, to the resilience of a heart that refuses to be corrupted by the evil it has endured. Even when doubt crept into your mind, and it did many times, you still chose to carry yourself with grace. There were moments when the weight of injustice felt unbearable, when you questioned if it was worth it to stay silent, to keep your composure, to hold back the anger that burned inside you, yet you resisted the urge to become like them. You resisted the temptation to let your pain dictate your actions. And though the world may not have noticed the battle within you, heaven took note of every moment you chose the higher path. There is a hidden beauty in suffering with dignity, for it shapes you into someone they can never become. While their actions have chained them to guilt and eventual downfall, your endurance has elevated you to a place of quiet triumph. They cannot steal this from you. No amount of betrayal can erase the strength you discovered within yourself through your suffering. No deception of theirs can tarnish the purity of your endurance. They thought they broke you, but they only revealed your resilience. They thought they silenced you, but they only made your silence thunder louder in the realms where true justice is decided. They thought they ruined your story, but they only added chapters of courage and integrity that will echo far beyond their reach. What they fail to understand, and perhaps still do not see, is that dignity in suffering is the ultimate form of defiance against cruelty. It is the unspoken declaration that says, "You may wound me, but you will not define me. You may betray me, but you will not reshape me into your likeness. In this you have won a victory that cannot be measured by worldly standards, but is immortalized in the records of divine justice." God's justice is precise and personal. There is something profoundly comforting in knowing that God does not deliver justice in generalities. He does not hand down a broad, sweeping judgment that merely grazes the surface of wrongdoing. No. His justice is far more intimate, far more deliberate. It searches out the exact wounds inflicted, the precise betrayals endured, and addresses them with an accuracy that human hands could never achieve. Every tear you shed, every moment of silent anguish, every quiet sacrifice you made while they plotted in the shadows, all of it is noted, all of it is counted. And justice is not only coming, it is coming tailored, perfectly fitted to the shape of their betrayal. They believed they would escape, didn't they? They thought their cruelty would be swallowed up by time, that the world would move on, and that you would somehow forget the sharpness of the pain they delivered. But what they fail to understand is that divine justice does not operate on the world's timeline, nor does it fade with the passing of days. It lingers, it waits, it watches. And when the moment arrives, it moves with precision so exact that it touches them in the very places they believed were untouchable. It is not random, it is not coincidental, it is personal. But just as they knew exactly where to strike you, where your trust was most vulnerable, where your love was most genuine, and where your defenses were most thin, so too does justice know exactly where to reach them. It knows where they hid their fears, where they concealed their pride, where they buried the false security they clung to. Divine justice does not scatter its force like wild arrows in the dark. It is an archer whose aim never wavers, whose arrows find their mark every time. They will feel it not as an abstract discomfort, but as a piercing echo of the pain they once inflicted upon you. The irony is sharp. What they sowed into your life will return to them, but it will be multiplied and mirrored so perfectly that they will have no doubt about why it has come. They will recognize their own cruelty in the suffering they experience. They will see reflections of their betrayal in the betrayals that unfold in their own life. They will taste the bitterness of their own deception, now served back to them by hands far stronger than yours. And it will not come from where they expect. That is the beauty of divine justice. It surprises, it catches them unaware, it emerges from the very corners they thought were safe. They built walls around their pride, they shielded themselves with success, they surrounded their deceit with layers of lies, believing these would protect them from any form of retribution. But the justice of God slips through cracks unseen, it bypasses every defense, and it arrives directly at the heart of their false security. Now, as you stand here, carrying the memories of the pain they caused you, I want you to feel something you may have long been denied: relief. Not the fragile kind of relief that fades when memories return, but the deep, abiding peace that comes from knowing, truly knowing, that justice is not blind to your suffering. You may have walked through your hardest days believing you were unseen, unheard, abandoned in the silence of your trials. But you were never alone. The eyes of heaven were upon you from the very beginning, watching not just their betrayal, but your endurance. Not just their cruelty, but your dignity. Their actions, though carefully hidden, have been laid bare before God since the very moment they conceived them. And you, who bore the weight of their deceit, who carried their wounds in silence, have not suffered in vain. Your pain has not vanished into the air like forgotten whispers. It has been written into the records of divine justice. Each moment a testimony of your innocence, each tear a loud cry for balance to be restored. Do not let your heart be troubled by the false appearance of their freedom. Do not be deceived by the illusion of their peace. Behind the curtains of their life, the gears of justice are turning, quietly, surely, and with perfect precision. What they gave you in secret, life will return to them openly. What they buried in darkness will be unearthed in the full light of day. They cannot run from what they have sown, and they cannot escape the harvest of their deeds. And you who stood firm in your storm, you who chose dignity over revenge, you who bore your wounds with grace. You are not just a survivor of their betrayal, you are the living proof that the innocent are not forgotten, that righteousness is not in vain, and that there is a justice far greater than anything man could create. Hold your head high, not in pride, but in quiet strength, knowing that your story does not end in pain, but in vindication. There will come a day, not by your hands, but by the hand of the Almighty, when the balance will be restored so clearly that even those who doubted will stand in awe. A day when the truth will no longer whisper but roar like thunder. A day when the scales of justice will tip, and you will see with your own eyes what heaven has long prepared for you. So, carry this truth in your heart like a shield. Let it guard your peace. Let it quiet your restless nights. Let it remind you that your suffering has purpose and your patience has power. The God who saw their secret betrayal is the same God who holds your future. And his justice, precise and personal, is closer than you think.